Welcome back. We're now at episode 5 of the Existential Lounge. A little bit of a milestone for us. Ain't that crazy? 5 episodes in.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's almost feels like a long time now, but
it
here we
does.
are. And we keep pushing. But today's episode is going to be a little bit of a tougher one to talk about a bit, I think. It delves into stuff we not only not have figured out, but kind of eat at us on a regular basis, I'd say.
Yeah,
It's the idea of belonging. It's finding where you feel like you belong. Where am I at home? At what point in both the outside and the inside do I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be?
yeah. Belonging is interesting because it feels like it's something that is in the background of everything that we do in life, right? The way we dress, the things that we want to read about, the people we
Yeah,
try to go around, the places we go to. Um, so many ways in which we operate in life. The primal urge to belong is in the background quietly fueling all of these things, and
yeah.
it's an anxiety.
It
It's like,
really is. It's that want to feel safe, to feel comfort in
yeah,
the situation you're in, and I think more so than ever, societally speaking, it's hard to find that because everything seems to be so tailored to what's normal, what's okay, what am I supposed to be doing, that not often enough do we find ourselves in a situation where I can fully be me and be completely okay with that.
hmm,
And that state, that small little sliver of existing is what we're looking for here,
yeah,
where that's belonging. When you feel your truest self is accepted to the largest degree, that's what we're looking for.
yeah. I think you can almost liken the pursuit of belonging sometimes feels, correct me if like you also feel that way, but it's like the fitting the round peg in a square hole type of
Yes.
saying, but like you're shopping, right? And you're walking around and there's all these different like pegs and you have to like select one, like, and then find the hole for it. And it's just like, it feels like we're more frequently shopping for the shape of what we want, and trying to fit into something that may seem collectively okay or whatever, rather than, you know, going at our own little shape, making our own shape rather than
So
finding pre-existing ones to then put into things, if that makes sense.
got it. So just I want to kind of like clear that up for me. You're saying like where the peg here that needs to be find, it's where you're supposed to be placed, and instead of finding where we're supposed to be placed, where we fit, we're more often looking to mold our peg into what is already there.
Kind of like there's, I don't know how to like articulate this. I think that we're in ways shopping for ways we think we may be accepted. So like picture you walk into this like pay like this pig store, and it's like there's all these pre-existing shapes,
Yeah.
right? And we look and we're like, what shape might I be accepted for having the most?
Right. Like I might be a square, but people like triangles. So how
Yeah,
can I be a
let me
triangle?
grab the triangle and like try my best to like fit that in different areas in life.
Right.
Whereas I think the most important thing is like what I was kind of saying, like shaping our own rather than going out to look for different ones. I think starting first within ourselves in that way
Yeah,
and shaping that is the
that I
important
think is a big part of belonging because often we think of belonging as being a physical place or a city or a job
one. Yeah,
or a friend group or something like that. But belonging is as much inside as it is outside.
yeah,
Belonging is coming to terms with who you are, with both flaws and um, goods.
yeah.
It, not necessarily becoming complacent with the flaws, but rather acknowledging that they're there, fixing them where we can, and just coming to terms with what this thing is, the thing that we identify as the us.
Mhm.
That's such a huge part of belonging because to keep using your same analogy about the kids' toy, it's actually I don't know if that follows there, but that's fine. Um, it's more so this idea that you can't fit in anywhere externally until you're okay with what's internal.
Yeah. So to piggyback on the external element to belonging, there's such a consistent struggle for us to find peace within ourselves.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a constant pursuit in the same way we can liken the idea of happiness being this, it's not a destination, it's a consistent effort, it's a consistent like
Right.
way of approaching life, and it's here, it's not, but we do things to cultivate it. That this sense of connection within ourselves, this okayness, it can be fleeting. And I think we're reminded so consistently of this that
Hmm.
we could go about our daily life and then feel suddenly like we're protecting our self-image in some way,
Yeah.
almost from ourselves too. I think that we like
I think that's the biggest
unconsciously do
one.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that oftentimes parts that we find that are shortcomings in ourselves, we try to hide and try to ignore those, really push them to the side as opposed to diving into it. And I think that oftentimes that creates like this hemorrhaging almost aspect to character where we keep pushing forward without having had to address those things that are bothering us.
Yeah,
And you can't belong anywhere in that state because, like I said, there's that constant hemorrhaging, that thing where it's a ship, but there's a hole somewhere and it's
yeah.
sinking. No matter how much you try to continue pushing downstream,
Mhm.
there's a hole in the ship.
Yeah, I think that finding ways to, like you were saying before, not necessarily complacency, but finding ways to be in the same way that, right, if a child makes some mistake, that you would be embracing that child,
Hmm.
that sometimes we have to have that same degree of acceptance and comforting approach within ourselves. I think that we're quick to chastise ourselves like
Yeah.
very aggressively, and we're so quick.
I think that we often expect more of ourselves.
Yeah.
We expect so much of ourselves because, like you said, in a child, you there's this novelty to them that they don't know what's going on really. This is all new to them,
Mhm.
but expect that because 20 some years have passed that this person shouldn't have this novelty anymore, but in reality it's there and then some because this
Yeah,
child didn't even have the capability to understand certain nuances that we do now, and more of this is new now. There's more novelty to it. the
for sure. I
the
think that's a
expect
good point.
the expectation
Yeah.
that we're supposed to have stuff figured out often leads us to those places where we are becoming unaccepted in ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's okay that not having stuff figured out is okay. And that's what we were talking about with not necessarily becoming complacent with that okay, but realizing that that's fine, that that's there, and these are the things that I'm doing to make that better going forward.
Mhm.
But it's not going to be fixed today. It's not going to be fixed tomorrow. Like you said, it's an ongoing process
Yeah.
that you will continue doing. It's having that ability to essentially like reel yourself back in those moments of anxiety where you feel like you don't belong, where you feel like none of this is right. You're able to course correct your ship going downstream.
Yeah. Life's always new. It's our first time being the age we are. It's, you know, at any point in any new day, and with that requires new approaches and tweaks, and it's never ending. And I think just being comfortable with our own mind is so important. I think that we have to catch habitual negative thought processes when we have them, and recognize these loops. I forget what percentage of it, but it's insane. The how most of what we do every single day, be it physically, be it verbally, are just habits, right?
Yeah.
And we get caught in these loops, and we can get caught in a negative loop of self criticism or just internal dialogue
Hmm.
that we don't realize when it happened, but like we're like, fuck, it's I hate being in my own head. You know, you blink and you'll feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Um and it's no simple route on how to effectively combat that, but it just brings forth it highlights the importance of doing things so regularly that help us to be more at peace with ourselves. And people feel that. I think people externally just can really experience someone that's
Hmm.
around them that is at peace with themselves. And Andres and I spoke about this previously before the camera came on, but it was like about awkwardness and like how when we're comfortable with things that may seem weird or taboo, it takes that power away from it. And
Yeah.
that's a form of being okay with ourselves, is recognizing that to every human there's a shadow, to every whatever, we have incredible flaws everywhere. And the less we try to act like they aren't a thing, the when we try not to run as frequently as we do from things, if you accidentally burp in a job interview, let's say it just came out, and it's more awkward to not address it than it is to be like, I totally just burped, I'm sorry I did that, like we'll keep going or something.
Yeah.
It just, when we pretend that these things don't exist, it makes it worse. And I think in the same way, we can grow in a sense awkward within ourselves.
Yes. So things can only be taboo if we allow them to be. Essentially, for something to be taboo, it has to have that air of um, where we forbid discussion of it, where
Mm,
we aren't allowed to talk about this thing. But when you, like you said, bring it to the forefront and it's like just address it, it kind of loses that power. It loses that taboo, and that's what we're trying to um, say here. That we don't, there's no reason in that only creates awkwardness, which limits conversation, which limits interaction, which essentially limits your ability to belong in that situation.
yeah.
Now both parties are awkward, both parties feel like this isn't what we wanted, whereas you can take charge of that by addressing that taboo. But I did want to take a few steps back to something you said earlier that kind of sprouted an idea in my mind. You were talking about how often we can fall into bad habits, and bad habits can only exist in a vacuum where nothing else is taking its place. The This state of nothingness opens the door for something negative to take its place. So, are you following me there?
The state of
Yeah,
nothingness.
so
Repeat that.
if we're not doing something actively going out and doing something that we consider good or that benefits us,
Yeah,
that opens that door for something to take its
for
place.
sure.
So, what do we do in order to make sure that we're not falling into these bad habits? Is creating good habits. I think that a big one for developing an internal understanding is meditation, which we've talked about a lot on this channel. That getting to understand where our mind goes, when it goes, why it goes there,
Yeah,
being able to examine why we're doing these things. Why did this certain thing come to mind right now?
yeah. I I think something that is really useful, a way to reframe our relationship with our thoughts, is try to view it like there's a roommate in your brain. And
Hmm.
when you go to meditate, you're you're taking the time to come home and come face to face with that roommate who's
Right.
always there. They're always speaking, they're always throwing these emotions at you. And it's a moment to come home and sit right in the living room with them and hear everything that they have to say. And you see yourself in a whole different light. You understand, or you begin to understand, I think, through
Yeah.
time. But first you see, you witness, you're observing, you're experiencing what it's like to be in your own mind without the intrusion of stimuli around you distracting from that.
Hmm.
And at any given point, we are overloaded with stimuli. And
Right.
I think that the first step in being okay with yourself is definitely, fully agree, taking that time to sit down with that roommate,
Yeah, you
you know?
can't get to know anybody else until you know you. It's
Yeah.
it's a cliche as old as time saying, but we need to understand who we are. We need to know who it is that we're sharing this brain with. That, like you said, that roommate that's in there, that's the you that you wish you could be in a situation where you didn't feel external um, pressures to act a certain way. That is, to bring it all the way back to your child's toy analogy at the beginning. That's the circle peg or
Yeah.
square peg or whatever, that before you started chipping away at it, before you started to mold it into what you think is socially acceptable.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
Yeah, you realize that there's already so much shape to it. You've just been distracted going to all these different places and just looking everywhere outside of you. I think we realize that when we when we try to dissolve all of the external pressures and expectations and social things that exist, that ultimately filter and mold us, right? We take moments to kind of like let those fall away, and we'll feel them, right? When we're out in public and we're out in a group of people, there's a different feeling of who it is that we are than when you're home alone in your room, right? Or you're wherever. Maybe you feel less comfortable with yourself in those situations than at home. And um,
that depends, honestly. I know that I think that would be the case for you and me, where we do feel the most comfortable in those alone times. But I think
yeah,
that comes as a result of getting to know that inside. I
uh-huh.
think a lot of people don't. And
Correct.
what, and I'll say this not from a place of like, oh, I've gotten it all figured out, because I don't. But for example, when I was younger and I wasn't really doing these practices to get to know who I was, I found comfort in going out to these social settings where this is what we're supposed to be doing. Um, and felt this unease whenever I was alone. And to this day, I still have those moments where being alone brings this level of unease, because I don't fully know who I'm with. I don't know how I'm supposed
Mm.
to act when when all the guardrails are down.
This
I
is
don't know.
that's an interesting point. The I don't know how I'm supposed to act. Because I was wondering, I'm like, is being around a ton of people, like, is the comfort coming from it being a form of distraction? Is it
That's what
coming
I think
from?
it is.
I think it's very. I think there's so many parts to it because it's got to be that. It's also got to be I'm doing something that is expected of me. That when you do these
I
things, you're
know the role
normal.
I'm supposed to play in
Yeah,
those moments.
yeah.
I
The hat
know
you're
it.
wearing, the
Exactly.
role.
When all
Um,
the guardrails are down, when there's nobody that I'm supposed to be playing a part for,
yeah, the
I'm
role.
lost because I don't have a role to play anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like an actor with no script, and it's like,
What do I do now?
yeah, how am I supposed to be?
Those
Um,
are the hard moments. And like I said, we now have this ability that has come through practices like meditation to get to know who that is and feel more at ease with that moment of solitude that didn't come before. But still, there are moments where there's just so much unease. Like, I'm even finding myself rubbing my fingers as I say this because it brings unease.
mhm.
It's just a weird place when you don't know how to escape your own mind, but we shouldn't want to feel like we need to escape our mind. Those moments where I want to feel like I like just tear out of this and jump out of whatever this is
Mhm.
are the moments that in a perfect world you'd want to dive deeper into.
Yeah.
That's the moments where you're like, oh, this is getting uncomfortable. Time to like take the floaties off and just go right into it.
Yeah, take to rip out the magnifying glass and examine why. It's so crucial because our relationship with our ability to do that on a regular basis is going to be one of the absolute ultimate elements that determines our quality of life.
Yeah, 100%. Like we said earlier, if you don't have that down, you can't really go and into a room and hold a conversation and just take over a room, demand that amount of attention when you don't feel inside like you deserve that amount of attention.
I think that we don't regularly place the value that it has as we should. For instance, right now, I ask you, would you rather be a billionaire or entirely at peace with yourself?
I'll take the latter 1,000 times over.
Exactly. And I think that most people would too. I
Yeah,
think if they took a moment to truly think about it, they would too, because we've seen proof of extremely wealthy people completely living nightmares.
I think that a lot of people might take the money, but that comes from a place again of not knowing, and that opens up a whole nother conversation that we're not necessarily having right now.
Yeah,
But I think that if you were to choose that, it'd be indicative of you not really knowing that we were saying earlier. The
yeah,
people who would jump at the money aren't familiar with who they are.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anything, jumping at the money could oftentimes be indicative of trying to chase what you believe would cause others to pursue you
Hmm.
for having done,
Yeah.
right? Like you have desired things, you're now desirable. You're desirable because of that wealth. And so, I don't know, we want to just feel embraced. Every single human just
Exactly.
wants to feel
That's the
fully
thing. You want that.
embraced.
That reminds me a lot with talking about money in specific, where Chris Williamson brought up the idea of the guy in the
The
fancy
car.
car.
Yes.
But
So good.
it really is because the guy in the fancy car wants to be noticed, so he
Yes.
gets a fancy car. Like, look at me, guys. Look, I have this really cool car. I'm someone you want to hang out with. I'm someone you want to be friends with. But in reality, you're not looking at the guy in the car.
No.
I'm looking at the car.
Yeah.
The guy inside is irrelevant to the random person on the street that just sees a nice car drive by.
Yeah.
But that person that's inside the car is so desperate for that belonging that they derive self-worth from someone seeing their physical things they own,
Yeah.
and that's where they think that, oh, this person wants to be friends with me because they see car, but this person never saw you, this person doesn't know you, they just saw a car.
Mhm. I think it's increasingly more difficult within how many distractions exist to get to know ourselves. I
Yeah.
think that, being of a younger generation, we're in our mid 20s, like we we see firsthand how difficult it's become to sit within our own minds. And especially nowadays, like we are warriors. We have to be warriors with fighting um comparison, you
Yeah.
know and comparing ourselves to people that are at levels that we wish we were, or have things, or and it's a lot, and it is more demanding now than ever to take that time to be within your own.
And that's what I was saying earlier with how the unfocused mind is susceptible to becoming a victim of these distractions.
Yeah.
The mind that doesn't have a place, it's a goal it's set, a place it wants to reach, it could easily be distracted by scrolling endlessly and look at what this person's doing, look at what this person's doing, look at how much viewers this channel has, etc., etc. Um, if we are able to take control of our mind, not have those big gaps of susceptibility
Mm.
by finding goals, by finding what is a short term goal that's going to eventually lead to my long term goal, and just focus your mind on that. When your mind is focused on going to a destination, it's much less susceptible to these distractions, these things that just pull you left and right until you're not really doing anything.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of a question Chris also brings up, where he's saying like, "What do you want to want?"
Yeah.
And it reminds me of like, how often, what things do we buy, what activities do we partake in, what, how do we carry ourselves, all of these things, how much of it is actually generated by what you truly felt you wanted to be and act as versus what you
What
felt pressured. You
exactly?
know, what did, like, did the world, like Play-Doh, take you and turn you into this thing, or did you do that within yourself from just your internal innocent natural desire to do so?
Right. What do I want is a question like, to bring it back to the guy with the fancy car. I want a car, but why do you want that car? Because you think that this will give you this illusion of grandeur amongst other people.
Mm,
But he didn't ask himself, do I want to want this car? Do I want to have this desperation for approval?
yeah.
Because that's what you're really saying when you say, I want this car. If you want this car, what you want is what the car would bring, which is that approval. So you want to want approval. And it's that situation where, is that really where you want to be? Is
Mm,
that what you want? I don't think you do. I think it's what you think you want. And that's why it's super important to ask ourselves that question of, what do you want
yeah.
to want?
Because sometimes some people definitely want the car because it's comfortable or because they love being fast or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely that group where that we all fall into, that we felt motivated to do something. I remember like back in middle school, like it felt important to like have a particular backpack that
Yeah.
like most people had. Like I remember JanSport being the
I
thing.
was picturing that backpack in my head
Yeah.
as you said
And
it.
if you had some like big North Face backpack, you looked like you were going like on some camping trip. It puts you into the category of like nerdy or just outcast, and
Yeah.
it was just cooler to have the JanSport. And I remember falling into that.
Yeah.
That shoes, like it was so important. It was so important.
Shoes, the clothes we wear, the kind of haircut we have,
Yeah.
basically everything. If you take a minute to see why we do each thing we do, it's usually based on that external approval.
Mhm.
And we just, fighting that, I think, is just so important.
Yeah. It we spend so much time trying to impress or be embraced by people that don't really matter in our lives,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and
The ones who matter wouldn't be impressed by that.
yeah,
The ones who matter want you to be your most authentic self. And
exactly.
I don't know about like everyone, but for me, a world where everybody's authentic seems just more fun.
Yeah.
It seems more fun than to, everybody has a JanSport backpack. Everybody's wearing whatever Jordan's cool right now.
Mm.
Everybody's got the same haircut. It, there's something just that gravitates me towards people who are different, because I know they don't care. They're just
Mm.
being them, and there's something surreal about that almost.
Yeah, I think people naturally find it, they can find it two ways. I think it could be threatening because it in ways is showing you,
What you
look
aren't.
what, look, yeah, look what like you're too afraid to do,
Yeah.
you know? But on the other hand, I think that in many ways, many times people look at that and they're like, hell yes. That like you're separating yourself from the crowd. That's hard to do. That takes courage to do. But you're someone that does it.
Yeah.
And we all crave to be around people of authenticity. I think there's just, we're oftentimes just afraid to do it. You
Yeah.
know, to it reminds me of like those penguins that are standing over the water. All of them want to jump, they're all waiting for like one or two of them
Right,
to
and then
start
one, and then they
jumping, and
start coming down.
then they all jump. Exactly. um, but it takes one of them first,
Yeah,
and I think that in life, it's important to strive to be amongst the penguins that take that first leap.
yeah,
Um, there's more you there because the other ones are doing it like light switches, like just
yeah.
there was something just turned on and boom, it goes because it's just following in line. It's being a lemming.
That reminds me, by the way, um, this is a quote that Chris brought up. It's a lengthy one, but
Okay.
it applies. It was by Timothy Leary. I'm sure
Okay.
you've heard it. As I reading it, you're gonna notice it. Admit it, you're not like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. But it seems that the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider, watching the quote, normal people as they go about their automatic existence. For every time you say club passwords like, have a nice day, and weather's awful today, eh? You yearn inside to say forbidden things like, tell me something that makes you cry, or what do you think deja vu is for? Face it. You even want to talk to that girl in the elevator, but what if that girl in the elevator and the balding man who walks past your cubicle at work every morning are thinking the same thing? Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on a conversation with a stranger? Everyone carries a piece of the puzzle. Nobody comes into your life by mere coincidence. Trust your instincts. Do the unexpected. Find the others.
Yeah, I think amazing quote. I think something important to take from that is you would agree, right? Everyone, or you and everyone, is secretly super weird.
Yeah.
We are like these madmen. Every human is a madman inside that feels caged up, and we're trying so hard to just fit this mold that is useful to exist when there's massive populations, I think, in some way, if that
Yeah,
makes
we've
sense.
fallen into a robotic stage, into a
Yes.
what would be most efficient. And
Yeah.
complete side note, but as I said that, this reminded me of something. I was watching this random video about the changes in architecture,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
we've gone from beautiful architecture that is so intricate and each building is its own building and identifiable by its own design to we have a ridiculous amount of people on the planet and we now need to make everything as efficient as possible.
Hmm.
And in that effort of efficiency, we lose individuality. And I think humans are starting to follow suit with those buildings. For every coliseum, we have 13 new rows of apartments.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing analogy. I think that's super good. Um, yeah, we feel it. I think that, like, oftentimes people, we're just craving human spirit. We're craving authenticity. We're craving weirdness, saying the things that make you bat an eye because it stepped out of line of the expected dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you were some person at the food store, and instead of hi, how you doing today, like someone asks you what's your favorite color. That feels refreshing,
Yeah.
and it's sure, in the grand scheme of things, it's meaningless. It's not meaningless. I mean, I don't know, what is its value, your favorite color? We don't even know each other, but it made you think for a second, and
Yeah.
it made you.
It didn't fall into the good morning. How's
It
your day
didn't,
going?
and it's a moment of connection. It's a moment of actual vulnerability because you're taking a part of your mind and putting it out there rather than this robotic. The other thing is meaningless. The hi, how are you doing today? We know how you're going to respond. You're going to say good, how are
Yeah,
you,
even
like
if you're
whatever.
not.
Yeah, like it's not real dialogue, right? It's not coming from your soul, your spirit of just being. Whereas asking your favorite color, you're going to, assuming you answer honestly, like that's a piece of you that I received
Yeah.
that I wouldn't have otherwise. Otherwise, I just
Almost
received what I'm receiving from everyone else, just It's nothing.
And I appreciate that you used something like what's your favorite color, something that a lot of people would see as juvenile, but when you look at it, kids have that nonchalant, like I don't care what the world will think,
Yeah.
to ask those silly questions.
Yeah.
When did it become a bad thing to ask what your favorite color is?
Yeah.
At what point are you too old to care about colors? Like we see them every day. Why can't I have a favorite one? Why is it childlike for me to say you have a favorite color?
Yeah. Or I feel like we blush when being asked, or to be definitely that it seems like there's categories of questions that fall into like this has, you know what it is, I think
Hmm.
the same analogy with the buildings. It's not efficient,
It's not. Yeah,
right? It's
it doesn't help you do your office duties today to know what your coworker's favorite color is.
yeah.
But who cares about the damn office duties?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
like if you wanted to be an animal, what would you be? Like I just questions like creative, fun questions, you know?
yeah.
And dialogue like that is just missing so frequently. And I think that secretly,
And that creates that isolation feeling for everybody where nobody feels like they belong. When's the last time you were in your office and felt like, yes, this is an awesome place where like I feel like I should be here?
yeah,
And it's because we are saying no to these personal questions. We're not at work to become friends with our coworkers. We're there to serve the end of the
yeah,
business.
yeah,
And that makes everyone feel alien from everyone else.
correct.
So, and these all these things that we were just talking about, they're all that internal aspect of belonging where we have to come to terms, come to an agreement, essentially hug that inner kid that's inside of you and tell
Mm,
them it's okay to be you. But there's a whole other aspect to belonging. There's the idea that am I in the right place? Am I around the right people? Am I in the right city? Am I in the right job? Am I even in the right country? And it feels weird sometimes because every aspect of, like, logically speaking tells me that the vast majority of this exists on that internal place
mm,
that I've something we've talked about often since we've known each other is that we feel like we'd thrive in a location like New York City where there's like-minded individuals, a fast-paced life that everybody seems to have a goal they're moving towards. But I've always had this reservation in me that tells me, do I have to figure out more of me before that ever happened? Because there's a part of me that says if I were to pick up and move now, how long would that actually last? Would that actually fix the problem, or is that problem
can you think of
elsewhere?
can you think of a part of you that may come to mind that you feel is on the list of importances that if you changed that you'd be more fitting for that?
I don't know. Those are hard things to pinpoint as like a list, a bullet point of stuff. Um, it's I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you think that things like that would fix a problem, or the problem of belonging? I don't want to say a problem, but specifically
Hmm.
the idea of belonging somewhere. Do you think that just a physical switch would do that?
I think that in the same way that certain animals belonging to certain ecosystems they thrive in, you put them in
Mm,
a different one, they don't. I think that naturally humans just being so complex that as we grow, there are certain things that we need from our environment that has to do a lot with our
yeah,
character. For instance, athletes love competition or at least physical competition,
right.
right? And so, you know,
I was just going to say that I
yeah,
think that's a really good example to bring up because something that a lot of retired professional athletes often bring up is that they need to find something to fill that void of competitiveness, that
mm,
they felt like this is my normal, this is where
yeah,
I exist. And it's it brings up a the same idea of the money earlier, where these guys are multi-million dollar, like multi-millionaires that have played a professional sport for a very long time, come to retire, and they still don't feel like they belong because they belonged out there on the field, on the court, or whatever sport it may be that they were in, because what they where they belong is that competitive area.
The first thing I just thought of, have you seen Shawshank Redemption?
I have.
You know how like they're in jail all their life, they come out, they were like committing suicide
Hmm.
because this new way of life, this external environment that they were dumped into, so different than what they accustomed themselves to.
Yeah.
And I think in the same way that like there are, I think it's okay that you can't identify. I think that there are so many nuances and like human just psychology that it's not always, sometimes they're like I don't know, I could be wrong, but sometimes it just feels like there aren't even words to sometimes capture
Hmm.
what we need from a place that speaks to us. I think that it could I think 100% that we just adopt these needs. I think we grow hungry for certain foods over others just from mere exposure and knowledge that we gained, and that refines our character to a certain way. And certain environments are more conducive for certain characteristics than others. Some people that really want to laid back, you know, life may move somewhere.
Yeah.
When people that want a very fast paced going, lots of stuff going on, music outside loud, just revving with just human expression, they're going to move somewhere different. And I think that that's inevitable. And I think that sometimes we have to experiment. I think sometimes we don't even know we want to be a part of a place until we step there and we're like,
Yeah.
whoa, I like this,
Yeah.
you know?
Definitely. I think that reminds me a lot of where when we first met in college, where college felt like this place where I was supposed to have gone there.
Mm,
That felt right.
yeah.
It I loved the amount of people that were asking the same questions I was asking. The dynamic with a lot of professors was amazing.
Yeah.
That ability to find someone older than me that I felt had the knowledge to answer some of the questions that I never felt were answered.
Yeah.
That that was an environment that I can say I felt like I belonged, but obviously that's a fleeting one because we grow out of it in age. I I have that want to have that type of dynamic, that type of be surrounded by people who are all asking these same questions, but to find that obviously outside of a scholastic sense.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say the whole fleeting thing. I think that in the same way we outgrow clothes and need new ones, that um it's like old parable or whatever it's called, that like this person keeps trying to put on a new jacket they love, but they never took off their old one. And sometimes we have to remove old parts of ourselves to become new. And I think that, yeah, we may put on something now and it works for us now, but that doesn't mean it always will.
Yeah.
And I think that that goes hand in hand with just the idea that like life is constantly, everything is in change, nothing is cemented, and we need to be ready for that. And we just need to be listening. We need to be
Hmm.
very attentive to the subtle and large changes that are constantly going on within our minds.
That's I forget which one of the big philosophers is it, but the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah,
That's just something that's always in the back of my mind. Why did I just say that? Why did I just think about this? Like examining almost to my own detriment. Sometimes I
for sure.
examine my every action, my every thought, my every word, because I don't want to fall victim to that thing we were talking about earlier of emptiness that opens that door that we were talking about earlier to bad habit.
Do you think so? You just said something, the sometimes to your own detriment, the over examining. Do you think that when what you were saying about New York, that
That could have been a situation where I was over
yeah,
examining.
I think some. What do you think?
I think that that can be the case. Yeah. I think that there are, I don't know, I suppose that's a huge change, and it would be a change that when I ever decide to embark on that one, I want to know that it's the right time. And I guess if you wait too long for the right time, the train eventually leaves the station.
Absolutely. I think the there's that quote, the Chinese farmer parable, like the whole we don't know the good that may come from a bad or the bad that may come from a good. It may
Hmm.
seem like the right time, but like how do we know when something is the right time to do something sometimes?
We
I think
don't.
I think sometimes it may seem like it's the case, but other times it's totally just like I mean, you hear stories about these people that were like dirt poor, packed up and just did something crazy with their lives and it turned out to be the best move of their entire life where looking from the outside, looking in, you're
Yeah.
like, this is insane that you did this. But it worked out incredibly. And
What's the Alex Ramosi thing? Extraordinary people do extraordinary things.
yeah. And yeah, sometimes there are an infinite series of elements at play in making any particular decision, telling us whether we should or should not do it. Infinite.
Yeah.
There are infinite decisions that we could make with the infinite array of anything. And so you can't take that all into consideration. You can't. It would take
At times, you just
forever.
got to take that leap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to be like, you know what?
It's
With what I know,
terrifying,
with
but
what I'm feeling, with what I want, I have to trust myself that I'm going to be okay. And if something really awful happens, I think we just have to I think it's being vulnerable with ourselves, recognizing that yes, something bad may happen.
mhm.
Um, will I be okay on the other side? What can I do to be okay on the other side?
You
Like,
know, sometimes realizing that where I'm at is not okay, it lets you take that leap a little better.
mm,
Like, I take this leap, and I'm currently scared that in a few months' time, it turns out bad. But is that bad going to be worse than if I do nothing and in a few months I'm in the same position I'm in now?
yeah,
Yeah. And that, I think that helps push you to take that leap.
I like that. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'd yeah, it reminds me of the quote, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I think that like making decisions for better or for worse, that's living,
Yeah.
and we're not living when we're not connected with ourselves. We're not living when we're not taking those chances. And I think that we have to experiment. I think that part of identity, part of like this belonging, sometimes, what's crazy? I think sometimes we get overly comfortable in a state of being in a place that we don't even belong to.
Yeah.
And then we cling to that place simply because it's just we've been exposed to it for so long, but we never connected to it. And so we become complacent and stay as a person we don't like in a place we can't stand because this is just how things have been. And sometimes you just have to,
When the wrong thing becomes normal,
yeah, that's scary.
it is.
Thought
That's,
processes, habits. You wake up and you can't stand the first couple thoughts in your brain, whatever it may be.
mhm.
Behaviors, you like, I can't stand that I keep doing this. Keep doing it though. And you got comfortable with not implementing a change to,
That's when like years just become
mm-hmm,
decades. And
yeah. You blink and so much of life passes because you haven't been making changes. You haven't been, throwing curveballs in the monotonous just things.
right.
Sometimes we gotta surprise ourselves. I think that that's important. I think that doing something regularly, almost like you remember the Truman Show. You ever see that movie?
I have not.
For real?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a long thing to explain, but essentially, for the people that do, Jim Carrey does these things outside of his normal daily character. He had like such a consistent schedule, and his whole reality is essentially on a movie set, and he
Mm.
doesn't know that. And so he starts to feel like he is on a movie set, and he does things super random and different, erratic, that like you wouldn't ordinarily ever do, to
Uh-huh.
throw things for a loop. And he was like getting a kick out of it. But I kind of, it made me think of that for a moment, of how you really like that movie, of like, it's a crazy concept. But how we need to do that, I think that, ask yourselves, like, when's the last time I surprised myself? When's the last time I did something that I would have been like, I wouldn't expect myself to do that, you know?
Yeah.
It's fun. It keeps things fresh. It makes you, deepens your relationship with yourself, you know? And I think novelty is something so important to just
Yeah.
daily life.
Yeah, we become, like you said, it just that when everything becomes normal, you lose that. You lose that, like, I don't know what other word to use. It seems a bit small, but the awesomeness of existing is,
Mm,
a lot of that is in that novelty and that doing new things and that trying new things and testing what you're capable of. If you're doing the same thing you did yesterday that you did the day before, that you did the day before that, you're never really figuring out what you're capable of doing. You're just doing the thing that you already know.
yeah. I think that we need to experiment with who we are. I think that, like, only in taking those chances and doing something random or whatever it may be, can we learn who we want to be. The AC just kicked on behind me. It was
Yeah,
super loud. Uh,
you're good.
you probably could see me get scared in the
I
recording.
saw it. That's what made me laugh. But it's
um,
okay. Go
yeah.
on.
Um, I think that's part of it. Shit, you know what I was saying about the taking off a new jacket, putting on a new one. By doing something different, something random, you're, instead of just getting up in the morning and first thing you do is either look at your phone, or you hit the snooze button or whatever it may be. Find a way to get out of bed, do some jumping jacks, or get out of bed and go immediately to your desk and have an open like notepad and just draw a random picture of something that
Hmm.
is ridiculous, or maybe you find beautiful, whatever it may be. Doesn't Art skills are not required. And just do that. It takes 5 seconds. Just throw a loop in your day. Be something different, you know? And I think that the more we're willing to do that, right? This ties into what we were saying in the beginning. The more willing we are to step out of our comfort zone and say the things, ask the what's your favorite color question, to step outside of the conveyor belt of normality, you know, and dare to jump off and be like, I want to live. I'm sick and tired of living a life that was made for me,
Hmm.
that was laid out before me for me to fall in line with, for the certain songs that I should listen to because they're cool to like, or the clothes, or the whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Do you, and only then it's like we start living.
Yeah.
Before then, you're not living.
You're not. You're falling in line. You're in that robot mode
Mhm.
of just doing what you think you're supposed to do, and not, like we said earlier, not asking what you want to want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Belonging is just such a crazy topic where, or idea, I suppose, where you have to feel like you're in the right place within yourself, you're in the right place with people around you, which is something we didn't even touch on, which it just comes to mind now, is the whole saying that you're the sum of the five, or the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Mm.
So belonging is, such a large part of belonging is finding those people around you that satisfy those needs you have from your peers, finding those people who challenge you in ways that make you better, finding those people that are able to bring the best out of you even when you're not necessarily capable, or you don't feel like you you can
Yeah.
have those people that tell you no, this is what you got to do.
So I'm gonna really quick read one of my absolute favorite poems by Shel Silverstein, super short, but it says, "She had blue skin, and so did he. He kept it hid, and so did she. They searched for blue their whole life through, then passed right by and never knew." And the picture is like two like little people wearing these masks,
Mm-hmm.
and they loved this thing. They both loved this same thing, but they were too busy wearing masks to like connect on that thing
Yeah,
because they didn't feel like they could. And it's horrifying
it
because think
is.
of all the people that pass by us every day that you could have been so close with or shared great conversation with, but you didn't dare to enter the waters of authenticity. And trust is interesting. It's kind of like this. With trust, you can't just, you have to give a little to receive a little, I
Yeah,
think. And I think that in my experience, the times where I've just allowed my authenticity to go, it's contagious.
it is. It
I've
allows for the
noticed it's
people around you to.
contagious. Yeah. And I think that when we're afraid to do this thing, try to think to yourself, the person I'm speaking to or the people around me are probably dying to do this thing. Kind of like all those penguins are just dying to jump off the cliff, but they need that one person, that one little penguin to just go first.
Yeah.
Be that, be that penguin.
It reminds me of the quote we said earlier, just this specific part. Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on a conversation with a stranger?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
completely.
we too often let those moments pass by because we're scared to be weird, scared to not be normal, to be perceived as this weirdo.
Yeah,
But I'd rather be seen as a weirdo 100 times if it means I found that person who it clicks with perfectly.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that the logic for me that I like to use regarding that is when we're just fully ourselves, the people that find us weird, well, they don't belong in our lives. But inevitably, we're going to attract the people that do belong in our lives. And
Yeah.
we'll only actually do that through being that weird person.
Yeah. If we live trying to make sure we're never weird, we're never going to find the person who's weird
We're
with
just
us.
going to keep attracting the people that don't belong in our lives.
Exactly.
It's a lose lose. And then they're busy like with someone else that maybe that doesn't fit into their life either. And everyone's just playing a game of wearing masks where you're friends with people that you shouldn't be friends with, and they are too, and everyone's just lying to themselves. That sounds miserable.
It's
that's
extremely
that's
miserable.
awful. Like we're so, god, the things humans will do to just be accepted or pseudo accepted, to
Yeah.
feel like it's the case. And who are they accepting, right? Like if you think about it, when you are that inauthentic self for the sake of being accepted, who is being accepted on the other end isn't even you.
Hmm.
So you live a life not being accepted.
Ever. The real you is
Yeah.
never accepted because you
No.
never
The
presented that
real
real
you
you.
is sitting back in like a
Exactly.
corner looking out miles ahead and seeing this thing happen, and they're untouched. They're not loved. This other idea, this conception of this person that they have of you, that is this facade, that's what they're liking, and that thing's
Yeah.
not you. So
And they're not even liking it. Odds are they're also thinking this is normal, so this is how it's supposed to. It's just it's inauthenticity all around. Everybody's just
yeah,
like you said, playing this game.
yeah,
It's that's what we don't want to find ourselves in.
yeah.
And yeah, I think
We just got to strive to recognize when you're playing the game. We all do it. We all do it every day. We all do it, and we just have to. This is partly where like meditation, not partly, like massively
yeah,
meditation comes into play, where it's like, I caught myself. I'm playing the game. Stop playing the game.
yeah,
Don't do it, because the more you play that game, recognize whenever you're playing the game, you're not living, right?
right.
And let go, and
You're just being part of that like hive mind.
yeah, we have to unshackle that, throw it to the ground, and just figure out ways to just live more daringly.
Yeah. Just be a bunch of eccentric, crazy people, and that's
Yeah,
that's what we got to do.
completely.
And I
Yeah.
think that honestly wraps up today's video, right? I think this was one of my favorites. It felt very good. I think
Yeah.
we got this idea across as best as we could, I think.
Mm.
Um, and that's all we got for today.
Yeah. Thank you for watching, and we're gonna have another one out soon for sure.
Yep. See you
Thank
guys
you.
then.
Bye.
Bye.